My name is Hank Garner, and I lost over 100 pounds on a low-carb lifestyle, and I got my life back. My goal now is to help as many people as I can find health and happiness through this lifestyle. Welcome to my low-carb journey. Thanks for joining me for this edition of the Low Carb Journey podcast. I've got a very interesting show for you today. My very special guest is a guy that goes by the name of Castle Grok online, and he joins me this week to tell his story about going from standard American diet to a paleo low carb diet and then transitioning to an almost all fruit diet. I said when I started this blog and this podcast that I wanted to get to the truth about diet, exercise, and fitness. And, I've been very open about my experience and how switching to a low-carb lifestyle has fixed so many problems for me. And I'm very appreciative of that. But, what if other people have a different experience? And we're not all created equally. And some of us thrive in different ways. And I just wanted to get a different viewpoint, from another guest. And so this is his experience. We didn't always agree on everything, but I think, when you open yourself up to new things, you can agree to disagree sometimes. You can take, whatever nuggets of truth that you can find. And, I think we'll all be better off if we show each other a little kindness, courtesy, listen to each other's journeys, and go from there. I am not saying that an all-fruit diet is the way that you should go. You should test and find out what works for you. But like everything, don't take my word for it. Don't take anyone else's word for it. Find out and see what works for you. But before we get into my interview with Castle Grok, I'd like to tell you about our sponsor this week, and that is lowcarblifeshots.com. Life Shots is a great supplement if you're looking to replace that morning coffee, looking to supplement with vitamin D, which I do. Low Carb Life Shots, or Life Shots, is a great product to do that with. It's full of vitamins, minerals. It's not too sweet. It has natural sweeteners, and I think that you'll really like it. I, since taking it, have been able to cut down my coffee consumption, and it really gives you a great pick-me-up in the morning. If you're one of those people that's hard to, take your vitamins and supplements and remember those things, you just tear it open, you put it in a glass of water or a bottle of water, you stir it up, shake it up, and take it with you on the go. And it is a fantastic product. I highly recommend it. And just go to lowcarblifeshots.com, and that's shots with a Z, LifeShots, SHOTZ.com. So go check out Life Shots at lowcarblifeshots.com and let them know that I sent you. Now, on to my interview with the caveman himself, Castle Grok.
Had a really, really, really bad industrialized diet. Couldn't even call it a Western diet. It was atrocious. Take the absolute worst thing you can think of and times it by 5, and that's what I ate.
Wow.
And I was kind of a fat kid, got teased about it. I was into motocross, and I actually kept fairly lean throughout my high school years. I wouldn't say lean. I was real skinny fat, but not like overweight looking. Real high body fat, though. I think I was like 26% body fat when I got tested in high school. And I was still a skinny kid, though. So it was weird. I didn't walk around with my shirt off because I was skinny fat. And I ended up getting really, really sick once I started to get in my 20s. That horrible diet was kind of catching up with me. And I ended up, my girlfriend and I split up. And that was just kind of when I was starting to try and clean my diet up. I was, doing healthy whole grains and all that stuff.
Right.
5 meals a day.
Now let me ask you this.
Okay.
Before, because I want to get the full picture of your journey here.
Sure.
When you were doing this healthy whole grains and trying to clean up your diet, what was your body like at the time? Were you overweight? like
Actually,
me, it sounds like you grew up always kind of struggling with that. But
uh,
at this point, when first started trying to clean things up, what was your motivation for wanting to clean things up?
feeling terrible,
Okay.
mostly. I was overweight at that point, but my BMI, if you want to use that, was on the edge of normal. I was
Okay.
like, I wasn't really into the overweight part, but I wasn't lean,
Gotcha.
and I wasn't healthy, and I had no physical conditioning whatsoever, despite being, somewhat active. I could go ride my mountain bike around, it was 4 miles or whatever, and I thought that was some sort of special thing, but
Yeah.
as now it's like that's not even a warm up for me now.
Right.
But mostly it was because I had terrible inflammation issues. My knees were like gravel. I couldn't even do one body weight squat. I have arthritis in my wrists from breaking them from motocross. Um, just I have had chronic sinusitis my whole entire life. I was real susceptible to infections and stuff. I had strep throat tons of times. Just
Yeah.
just horrible, horrible stuff. And so I went to the doctor, and that was 2007, and I was felt on my deathbed. I mean, I could barely hold a job. I didn't really want to wake up at all in the morning. It was horrible. I was constant irritable bowels, and that was like not even the worst of it. It was just I didn't want to wake up. It was horrible.
How old were you at this point?
27.
Okay. Gotcha.
27. And I would say that it really started hitting me pretty bad about the age of 25. And so anyway, I went to the doctor. They couldn't figure out anything wrong with me, of course. I got blood work done. They told me I was healthy as a horse. All my blood work was perfect. And I was like, healthy as a horse? I'm sitting here in your waiting room, and or not in your waiting room, but in your little room here, and I'm like sweating because I feel so horrible. And so anyway, I mean, that's kind of the point where I took it into my own hands
Right.
to go after my health. So I started exercising a little bit more. I used to get fatigued. I would walk my dogs with my girlfriend like 2 miles, or I'd walk her dogs, I should say, like 2 miles, and I would be tired from that. And at this point, I was on like a super high carbohydrate diet too. So that's an interesting part of this story. So I was like dead. So anyway, I tried to clean up the diet, and I did start feeling better, and I started losing some of the weight. Um, then we split up, and I wanted to, I guess maybe that was kind of, some anger, some emotion or something. I wanted to try and pursue the triathlon stuff again, that I literally had to throw that dream out the window because of my knees and everything were so bad. And I started to try and run, but my knees were still bad. And then I think I stumbled on, primal eating and like Mark Sisson and stuff on Twitter. And I started dabbling in that a little bit, and then saw some improvements, and was like, oh, okay. After that, it was I think it was March of '09. I was full on primal, I guess you would call it, because there was still some dairy stuff in there. And that was the point where I went full on that. And then I was a low carber at that point, sub 150 carbs. Okay. Then from there, it rolled more into paleo, where it was less of the other stuff and more like kind of strict textbook type paleo stuff, and started getting lower and lower and lower carb. So go ahead if you had a question.
No, I was just following along here. So you went primal, started removing things, and yep. And you said that you were low carb, sub 150 carbs a day, which some people will laugh at that and say, "Oh, that's not low carb exactly. At all." But if we look at the big picture, for most of people on a standard American diet, 150 is still very low carb.
Yeah, exactly.
So what started healing in you as you started doing these things?
Well, kind of the things that I started seeing, I want to address your carb question here first.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to say sub 150 because of my consumption. If I eat as much as I want, even if I'm eating vegetables, I'm still 150. I mean, that's just because I eat so much.
Gotcha.
I have to restrict really on my food intake if I want to get below that. But a lot of where I was probably about, I'm going to say maybe 50 to 70 for a lot of it. And keep in mind, I was trying to be active while I was doing this too. I wasn't doing anything what I'm doing now, but I was trying to be, I was still walking my dogs and all that kind of stuff. Um, a lot of the time I was VLC, under 20 carbs a day. And that's really hard for me. Basically, it almost puts me into a zero carb diet just so I can keep out of it. My vegetable consumption is really high.
Yeah.
But let's see, where was I going? So I started seeing some improvements in my knees and stuff where I could actually like body weight squat, things like that. And I started to dose a lot of cod liver oil, and that seemed to make a big difference. So I think almost at that point I was really hooked on the whole Paleolithic and fish oil type thing, because at that point I saw so many improvements in my health. I dropped all the medications, which were a lot, and I was really doing pretty good. That's why I really don't want to bash the paleo diet or even kind of a paleo low carb type thing, because it did help me a lot. Right. But it wasn't a thriving diet. I praise the heck out of it because it helped me. I mean, it got rid of all the inflammatory systems in my nose, my knee, my wrist was doing a lot better. I would still have problems with it. It seemed like when I would eat like tomato sauce, nightshades, and that type of stuff, it would have a heartbeat. But for the most part, it was a lot better. I didn't want to like chew it off anymore because it hurt so bad. But
I had a similar experience. I was nearly 300 pounds and had horrible knee and heel pain all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I also broke my wrist in a motorcycle accident, and
it was worth it though, wasn't it? No.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I was 14 at the time, and I broke a whole lot of other bones, and they didn't really diagnose my wrist break, so it healed back wrong, and I've always had problems there. But Primal Living fixed all those things, and used to, every time a thunderstorm would come up, my wrist would just throb, and people laugh at that, but that's kind of one of those crazy arthritis things. But so far our stories sound very similar.
Exactly. I think that a lot of people's stories are going to be real similar.
Yeah.
Then I would get winded walking up my stairs still. I actually, when I was doing, the part of my diet when I was the healthy whole grain stuff, I was using a lot of supplements, and I was lifting really hard because I had lots of energy. I was consuming a lot of carbs at that point, and I was working out like a maniac, and I got super strong, and I started losing that when I was paleo because I didn't really have the energy to work out. So that's kind of where when people see my stuff that say you won't have the energy to work out, if you eat the carbs, you will. That's kind of where I'm going with that. I would carry my groceries up the stairs into my apartment, and it'd be like my heart rate would be up. And I kind of stopped doing a lot of the lifting stuff that I was doing because I just wasn't motivated to do it. And so I lost a lot of muscle mass on the paleo diet. I mean, I don't have any specific numbers, so it's, kind of, I don't know, subjective or whatever. But
you're going by how you looked and felt.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can see in the pictures where I lost it quite a bit. And I know, like, I used to do, I don't know, what do they call it, Bulgarian pull-ups or whatever, where you start at 12 and then you work your way all the way down. Yeah. I could do a whole round of those. And 8 months into paleo, it was like 12 was hurting. So it was horrible. I went from doing practically 100 pull-ups to 12. So anyway, I started to, a lot of kind of my idols online, they're ultra endurance guys, and they were vegans. One of probably the main tipping point for me was a guy named Rich Roll. He's an Ultraman athlete, and I followed him on Twitter quite a bit. And he's a vegan guy, and he's doing these monstrous workouts. I would see he's like, I'm out for a 4-hour run, a 5-hour bike ride, and it was like every day. I was like, okay, well, I know this guy's an Ultraman, and that's what he's going to be doing. But how is he doing that? I'm low carbon, and I'm trying to do these 15-mile rides or whatever, and my legs feel like they're going to blow up all the time. And I'm able to do them, but I'm not recovering from them correctly. And he's out there doing 5 times what I am. It only took him 2 years from the time he was practically a dead alcoholic to being an Ultraman. And I've been on this paleo path for a year now, and I'm not even close to where he's at. So I just kind of started thinking this stuff in my mind. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this veganism. I mean, I'm not an ethical animal guy or whatever, but obviously if you've been on my website, but I thought I'd give it a try, and I was really, really scared because at this point I was using a ton of fish oil to keep my joints lubed up for my exercise. If I didn't take it, I could feel it. I was like, wow, okay. So anyway, I tried this, and it was a high-fat vegan thing, and I wasn't taking any of the fish oil supplements. I was using flax at first because I was so scared about the omega-3s and all that kind of hogwash. And I started improving, and I started improving a lot, and I really didn't expect it, and I almost didn't want it because I loved the meat thing. I loved going out hunting. It was easy. I could just kill something and fill my freezer full of it, and it was cheap, and so I didn't really want it to work, but it started working. And then I saw the crazy controversial durian rider guy, and I'd actually watched his videos a couple years earlier and just didn't even understand how people could just eat fruit, and I didn't even know how it would work. So I watched him after that, but I just kind of blew him off. And so I wasn't recovering well enough still. I was basically paleo, but I was just without the meat. I was still high fat, but just plant-based instead. And my knees got better, significantly better, but my legs still felt like they were going to pop after workouts. And they never, I wake up the next morning and I would do these huge workouts again, but they weren't recovered. And so I decided to try and reintroduce carbs back in post-workout, because there's all this fat adaptation stuff, but I know that you have to have the carbs post-workout if you're going to recover. So anyway, I reintroduced the carbs, and so that would put me into like a moderate carb range because I would eat, 200 carbs of bananas after a workout or whatever, and it just flat out didn't work. I mean, it didn't.
Gotcha.
So I was relying on stimulants, massive caffeine because there was no motivation without it. And finally, in July of 2010, July 5th, I like to kind of go off the deep end for the 4th of July. It's my favorite holiday. So July 5th, I started. And I started with the low-fat raw vegan fruit thing. And I did that for 6 months. And the first month was actually a little rough because it seems like I have a problem with watermelons. I don't know if it's an allergy or what, but my energy was kind of in the toilet, and I didn't really know why. And I was asking questions on their forum and stuff, and they're like, well, people don't usually have watermelon allergies, but my heart rate would really skyrocket in my workouts. I was feeling lighter and I was losing some weight and stuff, but I didn't have the power that I had when I was on the paleo diet or even like the high fat vegan diet.
Yeah.
And anyway, I eliminated the watermelons, and the whole world changed. It was completely different. And then it was all uphill from there. And that's kind of the point where I've gotten now. I'm not a vegan anymore, but I am plant-based, and I'm advocating plant-based now because it really, all the stuff that the paleo diet couldn't fix. I mean, because I got most everything. The paleo diet took care of most everything probably inside of 6 months. Made everything better. I dropped the meds, I was on lots of them. I was on 4 different kinds of steroids. I was on antihistamines all the time. When I was younger, I was getting allergy shots, and I had all kinds of issues and antibiotic cycles and stuff all the time because of the sinus infections, and it was horrible. So anyway, I got rid of all that, and the plants really took care of the rest of it. And so now I am plant-based. I'm not vegan though. I will eat eggs every now and then. I do like shellfish type stuff, some fish. Like I've been a vegan for 16 days, and I had some smelt last night. So it wasn't like pounds of smelt. It was like, 6 or 8 ounces of it. So gotcha. I'm not completely vegan, but my diet is based around fruit. If you had a webcam, you'd see that I'm eating bananas right now.
I am also allergic to watermelon, and I've never met another person that was allergic to watermelon. But my throat closes up when I eat watermelon. It's the craziest thing, and living in the watermelon capital of the world is it's a very sad thing. But
Yeah. I know what you mean. I got Yakima's just a couple hours down the freeway from where I used to live, and the Hermiston melons and all that stuff come out of there, and they're pretty famous for their high sugar content. It's really pretty sad.
Yeah. So you don't call yourself a vegan, and
Nope.
I've done enough reading on your website and watched enough of your videos. What are some of the problems that you have with veganism? Is it this almost religious fervor that goes along with veganism a lot of times? Is that one of the problems you have with it?
No, I wouldn't say I really have any problems with it. I think it probably can work for some people, maybe even a lot of people. I don't know. I'm not going to be an authority on that. But I think that it can work for a lot of people too. They're emotional about the animals and stuff. It's great for them. I don't have a problem. I know I'm higher in the food chain, so I don't have a problem with eating animals. If I don't have to kill them, though, like right now, I mean, I know that I can thrive on mostly plants, or even all plants, at least for a 6-month period at a time. So I don't really feel the need really to kill them. So there's no reason for it. You know what I mean?
Right. I understand what you're saying.
So I understand where a lot of their passion comes from. I know it's their life. They can live it. I'm not going to tell them how they can live it, but I'm not going to be that.
I understand.
But I have a problem with making less of an impact. I don't agree with factory farming. I
sure, and I don't know very many people that love the concept of factory farming.
Exactly.
I think we all have, or almost all of us have a problem with, unethically raised and slaughtered animals. I think we can all agree there.
Yeah. Nobody wants to see cows and pigs walling around in their own crap, and then
No, I don't.
And then drugs, through their crap, and then chop it up and putting it on your plate.
Yeah, none of us get warm and fuzzy feelings about that. But
yeah, exactly.
But I have a good friend who is vegan, and he became vegan for purely moral, ethical reasons. And it seems to me that there are certain issues, certain things that he will just accept health-wise and things like that because of this ethical decision about animals. And it's almost like he looks at everything through this filter, and I don't know, it just seems a little disingenuous to his own health to me.
I guess that's where I would separate a little bit too. My health's more important to me than an animal living. I guess.
Gotcha.
I guess if that makes me cold, that makes me cold. But
I understand. I think that's part of our survival mechanism. I think that's. But one question that I've had in reading some of your stuff and also some of Durian Rider stuff, and how do you eat that much fruit? And I know that you kind of laugh at people asking that. But seriously, when you were on my side of the fence here, you had to have the same thought. How do you go through that transition, and what was that transition time like for you, aside from the watermelon allergy? If you could take that out of the equation, did you have weight gain? Did it take a while for your energy levels to stabilize as you switched from one, mainly macronutrient source to another? What was that like for you?
Yes, no, kind of. Okay, so at first, I did have to go I was using a probiotic, and the problem was that I was eating the fruit too green. In Western societies, we have this grocery store fruit mentality where you go into the grocery store and you see it and it's pretty and it's ready to eat. It's not at all. Those, even the yellow bananas in the store, I won't touch them. I won't touch them for days. They have to have spots or I won't eat them. And if you don't eat them without the spots, they cause problems. they don't digest right. When they're, dark or spotted or whatever, and you put them in there, they may be sweet and people don't like them. But if you eat them that way, you will get used to them, and they digest way, way, way better. And then I guess the issue with eating so much of it, it isn't as hard as people think. And people are like, oh, I just can't eat that much fruit, because they try and eat, 3 apples. Well, I can't even really eat 3 apples. It makes my stomach sour. But like sweet fruits like bananas and dates, and I know that Durian Rider preaches this same thing. It's because that it works. If you switch to something like sweet fruit, people say 30 bananas a day, and they just, holy smokes, that's so many bananas. It really isn't. If you were to take 10 bananas, the Cavendish bananas like they're on the mainland, and you put them in a blender, and you blend 10 of them, it's only like, I don't even think it's 30 ounces of banana. I mean, that's not very much, and that's 1,000 calories.
Okay.
So if you did that 3 times a day, that's 3,000 calories, and that's where they came up with 30 bananas a day, because they wanted people to eat 3,000 calories of fruit. So if you break it down like that, it's really not hard to eat like that. And when I first started it, as long as the bananas were ripe, I would have 16 for breakfast, 16 for lunch, and it ended up being 4,700 calories a day or whatever. So it's really not that hard. And especially if, you're motivated by all these carbs and you really do have a lot of energy. And then I was able to work out harder, so I'm able to burn them off easier. So my consumption's way higher than everybody else, but I'm able to do it. I'm able to exercise that off easily now, even though I still maintain that same amount of calories, even if I'm not exercising, and my weight won't skyrocket like it will with junk food, or even eating paleo. I mean,
Right.
it's crazy.
Now the natural question everybody's going to have is, well, of course he can eat all this fruit because he's, riding his bike, 20, 30 miles or whatever it is, every day. And, the natural question or comment is, as soon as he stops riding that bike, he's going to be as big as a house. What do you say to that?
I've stopped riding the bike lots of times and didn't gain. There's times, I'm an extremely lazy guy, believe it or not. And there's been times like last December, I didn't exercise at all, and I was eating only fruit, and I didn't gain anything. Nothing. And I was still maintaining 4,000 plus calories a day, probably closer to 5,000 a day. And that was eating medjool dates that are pure sugar, and bananas, and I could get, bags of oranges and stuff back in the Northwest too, but it's mostly bananas and dates, and then, throw salads and stuff in there for the most part. But yeah, it's mostly hogwash that you're going to gain weight if you eat all these carbs. The key is to keep the fat low. And when you ask me if I gained weight after first starting it, I did a little bit. And there's a couple reasons why it wouldn't surprise me. One, I was coming off low carb. Yeah. So it would make sense that, whoa, my body's just like, holy crap, you went from 20 to 50 carbs a day to 1,700. What the hell's going on here? I mean, that would make sense. But most of it, and I'm sure this is probably the reason, is that I was going through a move. I was moving to Arizona at the time, and I was a little bit stressed out, and the weather was bad and all that kind of stuff, and I was eating quite a few avocados. And so my fat content was actually fairly high, and being that I eat a lot of food, it was 3 avocados a day, like the larger ones. And so I'm sure that's why the fat gain happened, because I can do that now. I'm eating as much or more now, and it's not happening. It's not happening at all.
The avocados brings a point to mind. What do you do about dietary fat? There's lots of studies out there that talk about the need for dietary fat for brain health, for to maintain proper hormonal balance. There's lots of good information that dietary fat is good for us. So if you're eating 4,000 calories a day of mostly sugary fruit, how does that balance out for you?
It's still going to be between 5 and 10% of the calories from fat. So I don't know why you do the math on that. I'd have to use my calculator, but it's still a reasonable amount of fat, and I don't really worry about it too much. I realize that some people might need a little bit more fat than that, and this is where the low carb people are going to say, "Oh, I have to have more fat than that." I'm going to say some, because I think that anywhere from between 10 to 20% is probably an optimal range. Some people may need to be closer to the 20. I ran on 5% fat most of the time I was on the fruit diet and was absolutely fine. Some people have loss of sex drive, things like that if they eat that low of fat. I didn't, but I can understand that some people might need to have a little bit higher fat intake than that. Gotcha. There's, the hunter-gatherer tribes, a lot of them are about a 20% fat, so I can definitely see that would be a thriving place for some people. Maybe like 15% would be kind of a happy place. So I don't know.
Gotcha. I know a lot of people.
Individual thing.
Yeah, some people that I know suffer depression and things like that if they try to go on low-fat diets and things like that. Now, one thing, I'm glad you mentioned that about the hunter-gatherer tribes and things, and one thing I've really been thinking about lately is, in really trying to get into the mindset of living like our ancestors, that I'm really trying to be cognizant of thinking about those times of famine and feast, and understanding that our ancestors may not have eaten meat every day. If you have to hunt for everything you get and then share it with the tribe, there's probably days. There's probably days where you're going to eat a lot of meat, and then for several days after that, you're going to forage around and get whatever you can get your hands on, and then there's probably going to come some more meat and things like that. So what is wrong with us thinking like that? And I understand that low carb works very well and low fat works very well.
For weight loss, either one of them will work.
For weight loss, either one of them work, but you cannot mix the two. And that's, I think a lot of people, they think that they can really spike their weight loss if they combine both of those things, and they don't work.
No.
But what would be wrong with us kind of periodizing our diet, where you know what I'm trying to say, where sometimes maybe we eat a higher carb and sometimes we eat a higher fat. What would be wrong with that?
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and maybe like a seasonal type eating would be an okay thing too. Maybe if you're in the summer in like the Pacific Northwest or whatever, the fruit is super great there. And maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing to just, kind of be on mostly fruit for the summer, keep your fat low so that you don't gain. And then maybe in the wintertime when the fruit's crap and most of the produce is crap, you're kind of more into a meat thing. That might work for some people. I'm not going to do that because, I want to be an athlete, and that's just not going to work for me. Some people may be able to do that, and it might work for them. It might help save on their grocery bill and things like that. So I don't really think there's anything wrong with it, but I don't know if it's optimal. And the thing with me is I want optimal. That's all I care about. I don't really want to do a reenactment. So say, I don't think anything's wrong with fasting. I actually, fast every once in a while, but it's kind of harder for me to do fast now because I train a lot more, kind of almost train around the clock. So it's like I have to keep the carbohydrates in there and, try not to be so I'm not bonked out. but anyway, like you said, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Gotcha. It would probably work. I just don't know if it's optimal and if it's necessary. Is it really that healthy for you to be eating meat all the time? No, I don't think so. I mean, there's a lot of studies show that it's really not very good for thyroid and things like that. And if you're trying to lose weight, you don't want your thyroid messed up. And so whatever. But I don't think that it's necessarily bad. I just don't think that it's optimal. And we live in a world where we can be optimal. We don't have to have reenactments.
Sure. And I agree with you there. I agree with you. When you started adding all this fruit back in, did you inherit any of the old problems back that you had?
No, I eliminated everything and stuff I didn't even know that I had problems with, like skin. One of the problems that I really didn't realize I had was you get these little bumps on the back of your arms. They're almost like ingrown hairs or blackheads or
Right.
something.
Yeah.
Tons of people have them. Even stuff like that went away. It was,
Wow.
I didn't even notice it until people told me. It was like, I have nothing. I have like perfectly clear skin now. And I don't know if it's detox, if those are like little, bubbles of something from my past. Who knows what they are. But
Right.
anyway, they're gone.
Wow.
A really big thing was my breathing. And it was huge because I've had all these respiratory problems my whole life. It was inhalers and allergy shots and, I told you all that stuff, antihistamines and sprayed and injected all kinds of different steroids and crap. And I've always had problems. And I had exercise-induced asthma, basically my whole life. Yeah. And when I was on the paleo diet, most of that stuff went away. But I still had kind of this wheeze when I was under heavy load, in like a high heart rate zone.
Right.
And once I got on the fruit, that completely eliminated that. And I got to tell you, I was extremely nervous to go on the fruit diet because I'd heard fruit's inflammatory. I was scared crapless. I've had hours long argument on how inflammatory fruit was with people. Hours and hours. I was so into the low carb thing and the fat adaptation and all this kind of stuff that I argued for hours on end about how inflammatory fruit was, and that was the problem of all your arthritis, and you really had to do the paleo diet and to get rid of it. And then it was like totally dumped upside on my head in a matter of months, and all that went right out the window. Wow. I absolutely have zero knee problems anymore. I cycle way more than I used to. I run more than I used to, and I wake up the next morning and I do it again, 20 hours a week, back to back to back to back to back, and I can just keep going just like a machine. And my mood is way better. Thinking skills are way better. I mean, just everything. It sounds too good to be true, but it kind of almost is. Yeah. You know what I mean?
No. Now, another natural question is, what about blood sugar spikes and crashes? Do you have any of those?
I did when I was on the paleo diet, and it's because of the fat intake. If you mix the two, you're going to have problems with it.
Now, explain that. What is it about mixing fat and carbohydrates? What's happening there?
It's just not a very good combo. The fat slows down the movement. It like coats your cells. It actually just did a blog post where it's Doug Graham, and it's a really simplified version of it. There's triglycerides and all that kind of stuff in there too. But basically, you eat the dietary fat, it coats your receptor sites, and it won't let your sugar into your cells. Therefore, you can't clear the sugar from your blood, so you have elevated blood sugar. And there's actually in that newest post on my site, there's a link to a guy that does that. He shows his blood cells and stuff, eating his normal. I think he's a vegan. It shows eating his normal diet, and then he goes on to eat, pizzas and all that kind of greasy crap, and his blood sugar is going through the moon. And you can actually see the blood cells in his machine on this big plasma screen TV that he has, and they're coated and they're moving slower. And really, the bottom line is you just can't clear the sugar out of your blood when you have the fat in there. And what I always tell people, just to simplify it, is Thanksgiving dinner at your house, Christmas dinner at your house, all your family's there. They eat a bunch of, turkey and gravy, and then they eat mashed potatoes, and everybody's comatose on the couch. It's like everybody's just dozed off, snoring, laying on the floor. I don't know if your house is like that, but that's the way it is at my house.
Right.
And that's the way I've always been too. And there was holidays where, kind of going to binge eating a little bit, there was holidays where I would keep it paleo, and then I was still smelling, all the pies and cookies and cakes and crap that were laying around that I hadn't eaten. And I was stuffing myself so that I would try and keep away from this. But the body wants the carbohydrates, and I would be having blood sugar lows because of this stimulus from smelling this stuff, and I would end up just falling off the wagon because I couldn't take it anymore. Last year, I did all fruit for Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, and I just ate a bunch of fruit. I was eating dates and stuff. I ate more than I normally would, but I had no problem staying out of any of the garbage. God, now this chainsaw guy's moved again. Maybe I can go back to where I was.
Well, now this brings up a question that I've really been wanting to talk to someone about, because being a low carber and having huge success with low carb, primal, paleo, whatever you want to call it, and fixing my asthma, arthritis, high blood pressure, all those things, and I've seen huge success doing this, and I have also, for the better part of 9 months, been around 20 grams of carbs a day. A high day for me would have been about 40 to 45. And knowing that it was time for me to start transitioning into some other foods, but being scared to death of it. And I know that you went through the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to put the weight back on. I don't want to, have asthma again. I don't want to have high blood pressure, blah, 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 blah. But also realizing that, if you really think about it objectively, that the natural occurring fructose in fruit should not be an issue. What I think is happening with a lot of
even the Lustig guy or whatever, that's the big fructose phobe that everybody in the low carb community passes around his videos.
Right.
He's not a fruit phobe. He's a corn syrup phobe.
Exactly, and that's my point. That's where I'm going. Is that are we demonizing the wrong thing on both sides of the aisle here? I know a lot of low carbers demonize fruit, but I think what we really ought to be afraid of is high fructose corn syrup and all these other Franken, foods out there. I think those are really the problem. And the folks that are doing like the test on pizza and things like that after being vegan, are they really separating out? Is it really the fat that's doing it, or is it some of these other genetically modified things that are causing the problem?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, on the low carb diet, the fruit can not be your friend. I mean, when I was paleo guy and I was eating tons and tons of fat and stuff, on those days where I just couldn't really stay on the wagon, falling off the wagon was eating pears and berries. That was falling off the wagon for me. And I could gain massive weight really quick because a lot of time I was on a warrior type diet where I'd eat one time a day just to keep my calorie consumption down. In those periods of times, I was still eating these 7,000 calorie dinners. And then you have, so much fat and so much, meat and protein and stuff in there. And then after it was all over, I still wasn't satiated. So I would eat the fruit, and then I would see the huge gains after that. I mean, we're talking super fast gains, inhuman gains when you're eating that many calories. And so anyway, the fruit's not necessarily your friend if you're eating in a low carb style, because there's so much fat in there that it is going to stick to you. I mean, so it is the fat you eat's the fat you wear in that particular case. But if you want to eat the carbs and you pull the fat out of it, there's not as much problem. So I wouldn't say that you can really be a low carber and throw the fruit carbs kind of back in there. It's kind of one or the other type thing as far as weight loss is concerned anyway, and probably as far as blood sugar stuff for the most part too.
See, now you're messing with me because for the last week or so, I guess it's been closer to 2 weeks now. I've started adding some fruit into my diet. Some legumes just to see what they would do.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of, paleo
parts, that's what they'll do.
But, a little bit of black beans, a little bit of pinto beans here or there, just to see what it would do. And watching things very carefully and went from, 20, 30 grams of carbs a day to almost 100 grams for several days. And I didn't gain anything.
Yeah. That's just it. Even like Atkins, after induction, you're supposed to add the carbs back until you start gaining.
Exactly.
So you're probably able to add them up. You might be able to go up to, I don't know, your body or whatever, but you might be able to go up to 100 or something before you start gaining. So
right. So, one thing is, did this primal paleo low carb way of eating, did it fix my my metabolic problems that I had, abused myself for so long, and can I eat like a normal person again? Don't eat bread and all that crap.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
can I sample from the whole palette of food, so to speak?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I
I think I would still keep them separate if I was you. Like
yeah,
maybe in the morning, wake up and eat fruit. I know a lot of people like to eat protein in the morning because it holds you over for the rest of the day, but your glycogen is going to be lower in the morning. So it would make sense to eat fruit so that you could have energy so you could top off your glycogen for the rest of the day. So I don't know. You could fiddle with that. Maybe you want your protein in the morning and your fruit at night or whatever. But I think I would keep them somewhat separate if I was you.
gotcha.
Just for the weight gain stuff, because my weight has, I mean, weight loss and weight gain are kind of my specialties. I mean, I'm basically a professional in that sort of, because I've dealt with it my whole entire life.
Yeah. So
Right.
so what for you causes you to gain weight now? Like, and I know you're trying to really lean out, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I want to be really, really light because when you're really, really light and you're an endurance athlete, you're really, really fast. It's the
Right.
bottom line.
Right.
I,
So,
not to the point where you're eating all your muscle away, but
well, that's my question is, you're eating all this fruit,
mhm,
you're doing all this endurance training. Are you just wasting muscle away?
no, because I'm getting faster and stronger.
Gotcha.
And if you're wasting muscle away, you're not getting faster and stronger.
So, what are you doing to preserve muscle? What, and you're not, if
Eat
you're
more.
you're only getting what 10 to 20% protein, maybe?
Um,
How are you preserving
yeah,
muscle with that?
probably closer to 10%.
Right.
Um, that's the protein it's really been marketed, and I think a lot of the research and stuff is probably based around these companies that are selling supplements. So it's they sway these studies to show this and this, and okay, yeah, I'm not gonna say high protein's bad or whatever, even though it's some studies show that it is, but I don't really know if it's necessary.
Right.
And especially in my experience now, it's 1 gram per day, 2 grams per day, 3 grams per day, or whatever a lot of these people are eating. It seems really unnecessary for me. And a guy, Brad Pilon, which most of your crowd probably has heard of, he's written a book, on Eat Stop Eat, and he's also written one about how much protein. And there's a link on my site if you're like in the sidebar or whatever. And it's really good. He really doesn't consume that much protein, and he was in that bodybuilding industry. He worked for one of the companies. I won't name the company, but he developed these products and the hype behind them and stuff like that. So he's really a pretty credible source to listen to on this.
Okay.
I think I saw one day. He's a bodybuilder too. I mean, he's a pretty strapping dude, and I think he said his protein intake was like 60 grams a day or something like that. It really wasn't very much. And so anyway, that's a pretty good book to read, and it'll probably take away some of the fear. I don't know what kind of lawn maintenance day it is around here, but this is a thing. It's never like this. There's no trees around here. It's just a bunch of tropical bushes. All they need is a pair of scissors.
So, if someone wanted to try this thing,
Mm-hmm.
would you recommend this for someone who is overweight, or would you only recommend this for someone like you that had pretty much already met their weight loss goals and wanted to mix it up a little bit? And is this something safe for diabetics to do? What are your recommendations?
As far as weight loss goes, anybody. Absolutely anybody. I'm not a doctor, so if you're like extremely metabolically deranged and have, messed up liver and things like that, I don't want to make any recommendations like that.
Sure.
But if you're just overweight and you want to try like a low-fat diet and it's based around fruit, let's go for it. In my experience, I've done keto diets and I've done low-fat diets, and I'm telling you, the low-fat diets, in my case, blow away the keto diets hands down. It's not even comparable as far as the weight loss numbers go. And like I told you, I'm pretty much a professional dieter. Well, like in your case, you lost 100 pounds or whatever. I lose 100 pounds every year. That's my weight fluctuates so much because of my volume of eating. It doesn't so much now because, I've kind of found where I want to be as far as what my food and eating real food and all that kind of stuff. But for my whole life, I've lost 100 pounds every year. I've done, even just this year, I did kind of a test after I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Body thing, and I think I varied like 60 pounds in 90 days.
Wow.
So, yeah, big time. And the fastest I've lost weight ever in my life, I think, was on low-fat. Matter of fact, it was low-fat fruit, and that was when I was in Arizona, and I dropped 24 pounds in 24 days. And I think part of the reason why the low-fat can be so effective is because you are eating carbohydrates, and you can exercise. And when you can exercise, you can burn more calories. So even since I've been in Hawaii, the first 3 months that I've been in Hawaii, I lost right around 50. I was almost 200 pounds when I came here, and I've got to be below $150 now. So I have a closet full of clothes, everything, jeans from size 30 to 36, and they're always in my closet because I vary so much throughout the year, or bi-yearly or whatever, just depending on what I ate. And like I said, if it's junk food, I will gain like you can't even imagine. That 4th of July weekend before I started the low-fat raw vegan thing, I think I gained 18 pounds in a weekend.
So what is it that causes you to gain this weight? If you put on 50 pounds, what do you...
20,000 calories a day.
Good grief.
I eat junk food. Yeah. So I understand the weight loss, and I can understand the weight gain, and I understand the binge eating because I've had problems with my whole entire life. People always say, where in the hell do you put all that food? And they're like, you must have hollow legs. And I'm like, I honestly don't even know. Because, your stomach's supposed to be the size of your fist, and I can eat 2 jumbo pizzas by myself and drink, 2 32-ounce sodas with it. And I can do that. And I've had tons and tons of people watch me do it. So it's just like, and when you do that, there's no way that you're not gaining fat. So it's just...
Right. Well, the other question I had was, how do you afford to eat 4,000 calories worth of fruit every day? Now, granted, you are in Hawaii, and so how can, if someone here in the lower 48 wanted to try that, how do you go about doing that? I mean,
you have to use bananas and seasonal stuff as your staples. So bananas on the mainland are actually pretty cheap.
They're about 50 cents a pound.
Yeah, exactly. And when I was doing the low-fat raw vegan thing, I actually would go to a wholesale house that sold like restaurants and things like that, and I could get them for 45 cents a pound, buying them in the case. So I'd go there and I'd buy 2 cases, and I'd ripen them in my car where it was warmer, the sun would hit it and warm it up a little bit, and that's what I did. And then I would mail order dates, medjool dates out of California, and I think I was paying $44 for 11 pounds, which is, that's pretty expensive, but the dates are so calorically dense that you can get in a lot of calories real easily with them, especially, when you have a big stomach like mine. So I'd just pound the bananas and I'd pound the dates, and it was easy, up to 5,000 calories if I wanted to. Easy.
Now, I don't really like bananas. I'll throw a half a banana in the blender with some protein powder every now and then, but I really got to hide it with some blueberries and stuff. I just don't like bananas.
Yeah.
I'd be screwed doing what you were doing.
Yeah, but you could make up for it with dates or mangoes or something like that. The bananas are really the easiest way because they're the cheapest way. And if you don't like them very much, it might be because you're eating them too green. Like, I used to like green bananas. I hated ripe bananas. They were mushy and gross, and I didn't like them. Now bananas
that's a big thing. I hate slimy stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they don't have to be slimy. You don't have to let them get quite that ripe, but just a little bit of spots. And anyway, bananas are like my favorite thing in the world now. It's like when I go without bananas, I've lost. So it's just because they're such an easy, cheap source. And stuff here in Hawaii is actually really cheap. Bananas are really expensive. Bananas are anywhere from $1 to $1.30. Actually, in the grocery store, I think I saw them the other day for like $1.59 a pound.
Wow.
So, and then Durian Rider, the problem he's having is he was in Australia and their banana crops got wiped out or something, and they were like $20 a kilo or something like that in Australia. So he actually went to Thailand so he could get cheap fruit, and then now he's went back to New York, and stuff's cheap in New York because there's such a huge population there. So, but anyway, it's expensive here. The papayas are kind of cheap, but I can eat so many papayas because they're mostly water, and so I still got to stick with the bananas. But the secret is if you can find stuff that's overripe. Like every day I go to the market and I just hit up all the vendors and I'm like, hey, you have any overripe bananas? And they think that I'm nuts that I want to eat this stuff that they're throwing in the garbage. And I think they're nuts that they're throwing it in the garbage.
Right.
Because I don't want their green crap. I don't even want to buy the stuff that they're selling because it's not edible for me. Mm. Other people may come there and eat it, but I don't want to eat that because that's not optimal. It's not higher in the sugar content. It doesn't digest as well. I don't want it. I want the ripe stuff that they're getting ready to throw away, so they sell it to you at a discounted price. So I go down there and I get 30 pounds of bananas practically every day, and they sell it to me for $5-10 depending on what mood they're in. So it's in that way it's really cheap. I'm getting bananas like 25 cents a pound or something, and I just mow through them.
Yeah. How much water do you have to drink eating this much fruit? Does that affect your water consumption?
A lot of people don't drink water, which I don't think is a very good idea because the fruit has a high water content.
Right.
Especially things like papayas or oranges or something like that. So, some people brag about how they don't have to drink water. I think that's silly, and it's especially silly for me because I'm in a tropical environment. And, like Hawaii here in Kona where I'm at, this is the Ironman course. It's known for being super hot and super windy and people getting heat stroke and things like that. Well, I go out there and I ride that course every day on my own. I don't really know anybody else in Hawaii with a car that can come pick me up if I'm, in distress. So I drink tons and tons of water out there, and I have no problems with it at all. I'll be in the direct sunlight in Hawaii. It's 100 degrees out in the middle of a lava field for 4 hours, and I'm fine because I'm just sucking down the water like crazy. So my water consumption is probably anywhere from, on the low side, a gallon, like if I'm not exercising one day, to 2 gallons if I'm exercising. And that's on top of my fruit consumption.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, man, it has been an hour already, and we could just sit here and talk all night. But
easily.
I really appreciate you taking the time out to come on the show and come across the fence here into low carb land again and share an alternative view of what's going on. Thank you so much for taking time. Where can my readers and listeners go and find you on the web?
For the time being, they can go to castlegrock.com, and that's me. I'm going to change that pretty soon because I don't like the name association, being primal or whatever. It was just a play on words when I got the website. I lived in this town called Castle Rock, and then I was, primal eater, so I just put Castle Rock, and the name was available, so I got it, and I never ended up wanting to use it for a screen name or anything, but it just kind of happened that way. So I'm going to change it. I just haven't figured out what I'm going to change it to.
Great. And they can get to all your videos and everything from there?
Yep. Most of them, if they're not, some of them, I was using a plugin that I depended on too much for the web design, and the plugin broke. So some of the videos might not work, but they're all on my Vimeo channel. And there's links and stuff to that in the site if you kind of dig around. I think if you go to the little tab that says for visitors, there's quick links or something like that, and it'll take you to my Vimeo channel. So anyway, it's just kind of last minute harebrained stuff that I throw in there on the video camera or on my phone when I'm out for a ride. I'm usually 4 hours into a bike ride or bonked out or fasted or something when I'm making them. So I don't put a whole lot of effort into them, but I try and get the main sort of message that I'm thinking about at the time in there.
Great. I've watched a bunch of them, and they're definitely enjoyable. You have to go check them out. But thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And
thanks for having me.
We'll send all of our fruit questions to you. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm not anti-low carb. I just don't think that's the optimal way to go anymore. So I can totally sympathize with anything that they're going through. And like I said, I had a lot of benefits and stuff from that as well. And I just wanted to take it to the next step. And this is what I found the next step to be. So
I
maybe the final step, I don't know.
Okay. Well, we'll keep in touch with you, and if things change, be sure to let us know, and keep us up to date on what's going on with you. Okay?
You'll see it on the side. I'm pretty transparent, and I'm not dogmatic about anything. If something works, it works. I don't I've told people before. I mean, if dog poop made me go faster, I would eat that, but. And I would tell people. So.
Gotcha. All right. Well, castlegrock.com, and go check out a site, castlegrock.com. And if you don't agree with what he's doing, let us hear about it. But thanks for taking the time out and coming over to talk to us. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Hank.
Thank you.
Take care, man.